Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Indie Zone. My name is Kathy. We are nearing the end of our discussion of the affidavit of probable cause. Today, we're going to address page number 16 of 18 total pages. This begins by saying, on December 23rd, 2022, I was granted a search warrant for Coburger's historical CSLI from June 23rd, 2022 to current, prospective location information, and a pen register, trap, and trace on the 8458 phone to aid in efforts to determine if Coburger stalked any of the victims. In this case, prior to the offense, conducted surveillance on the King Road residence, was in contact with any of the victims' associates before or after the alleged offense, any locations that may contain evidence of the unalivings that occurred on November 13th, 2022, the location of the white Elantra registered to Coburger, as well as the location of Coburger. On December 23rd, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received historical records for the 8458 phone from AT&T from the time the account was opened in June 2022. After consulting with CAST SA, I was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from June 2022 to present, the time period authorized by the court. The records for the 8458 phone show that the 8458 phone, utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to the area of 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th, 2022. All of these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening and early morning hours of their respective days. One of these occasions, on August 21st, 2022, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources providing coverage to the King Road residence from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. At approximately 11:37 a.m., Coburger was stopped by Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke, as mentioned above. The 8548 phone was utilizing cellular resources consistent with the location of the traffic stop during this time, and then in parentheses, Farm Road and Pullman Highway, end of parentheses. Further analysis of the cellular data provided showed the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th, 2022, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho, via U.S. Highway I-95. The next line and a half goes into page number 17. We'll address that in our next episode. If I could make some commentary here, provide some opinions, pure speculation based on nothing but the page that is in front of me here and information gleaned from prior pages of this PCA. First and foremost, we see another error in this PCA where the 8458 phone is referred to as another phone entirely. It's the 8548 phone addressed here in the third full paragraph of page number 16. And because, as we've learned before, the 8458 phone got that designation because it was the last four digits of a telephone number. This 8548 phone is not the phone number the PCA asserts belongs to Mr. Coburger, but is another phone entirely. It would be one thing if this was the only error within the PCA. It is not. It is at least 4 errors contained in this document. Early on, Detective Payne indicated that Madison and Kaylee were at the grub truck and also at the Corner Club at 1:30 a.m. on the morning of November 13th, 2022. This is impossible that they would have been at two different locations at the same time, at the corner club and then also at the grub truck at 1:30. That's the first error that we noted. A second one was where Detective Payne is describing the travels of the 8458 phone and gives the name of a town, Uniontown, which is in Washington, stating it is in Idaho. Stated that this phone traveled through Uniontown, Idaho, when there is no Uniontown, Idaho. Then early on, referred to him as Coburg, Kohberg, as opposed to Kohberger. And now we see the error with the telephone number that they're supposedly tracking and getting a pen trap and trace device on. In my opinion, this document should have been pristine. It appears that there was a rush to get it filed and there weren't eyes on it to make sure that it was in as pristine condition as the seriousness of these crimes merited. Secondly, there's a continuation of asserting that the location of this phone could be pinpointed to a specific point on Earth when it's a radius. And we see an example right here where Detective Payne is referring back to the stop in August of 2022 of Mr. Kohberger in the area of Farm Road and Pullman Highway. That's miles away from 1122 King Road. That is in the area of a shopping center. So it's, again, being suggested that these are pinpointed to a specific location on Earth when it's not. It is a radius. And then finally, in my opinion, I find it irresponsible for Detective Payne to have stated that the reason why he is seeking the pen trap and trace on the 8458 phone, which he said and justified it to aid in efforts to determine if Kohberger stalked any of the victims in this case prior to the offense and conducted surveillance on the King Road residence. Those were the two reasons given here. There's no reason to believe that that's not what was put into the warrant as well. This affidavit of probable cause was signed on December 29th, 2022 under oath. Approximately a half year later, the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, stood up in open court and stated while cross-examining one of Mr. Kohberger's expert witnesses, words to the effect, you know that there's no evidence that any stalking had occurred of the victims. So if they knew that in the spring of 2023, this certainly had to have been a fact known to law enforcement. To make this statement, I would speculate that once the public read this PCA for the first time, that thought may be stuck into the minds of certain people and still is a misnomer that is believed even to today. There was also no evidence, as we know, that he conducted any sort of surveillance on the King Road property. That was something that was a presumption that Detective Payne made earlier in the PCA that we addressed. So between the continued errors and the speculation masked as facts, it's a concern that this document, at least in my opinion, was provided to the judicial officer to justify the warrant for Mr. Kohberger's arrest. In my opinion, every line of this document should have been in pristine condition, no errors, and should have been able to be pinpointed to a fact, not based on a guess. This will now conclude this episode of the Indie Zone. Please join us next time when we will continue on to page number 17. This is Kathy. Thank you for joining us here today.